Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So as we all may know by now that Gran Turismo 7's PS5 Pro, which was rumoured to be one of the bigger updates of the year, did actually end up getting delayed in November, seemingly coming in December 2024 instead. Again, that is just purely an assumption, but it would make sense that they wouldn't put it back too long, considering it was originally promised as a day one title for the PS5 Pro. And again, since it's been a skipped month, a lot of people are assuming this is going to be a pretty hefty update. When it comes to hefty GT7 updates, we've only received one this year, which was of course in July of 2024 when we received the Eigen track returning from Gran Turismo games of old. Of course, we have the World Series finals coming up. This is where Polyphony like to do a lot of their showcasing for, VGT cars. Sometimes they like to drop a trailer. This happened of course earlier on in the year for the previous big update for this year. And again, it seems like a lot of rumours are kind of swirling around about a new track coming to the game. Now, typically when these rumours kind of swirl up is actually from comment sections where people will wishlist a track they want to see. Someone will see that and then it will kind of get spread around as gospel. The main one that I do typically see is Silverstone coming to Gran Turismo 7. That's never been the case. There's actually been no proper leak about Silverstone coming or really any mention at all. However, there has been two tracks that have been mentioned in leaks. So of course the first track that had a bit of substance behind it was the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, or the Canadian Grand Prix circuit. Of course this was first mentioned back in the middle of 2023. However, it still hasn't come to the game, and honestly at this point I don't necessarily think it will. Now, of course, at the end of 2023 in November with the Spec 2 update, we did actually receive a track that was set in Canada. Of course, the snow rally track that we got is actually set in the Canadian Rockies. So, of course, I kind of think at this point that may have just been the Canadian Grand Prix track. Again, just because there is a file name in the game doesn't necessarily mean it's actually what it is or that it will actually ever happen. Again, licenses, etc. are all a thing. And of course, the second leak track that seems to have some substance behind it was actually mentioned by a Super GT driver, which was of course Motegi earlier on in 2024. Now, we all know that Polyphony do have a close working relationship with a lot of their Japanese racing series, of course Super Formula and Super GT, so there is kind of some credibility to this. Of course, he did go on to mention that he thought that, of course, Polyphony were working on Motegi and that it should eventually release. Now again, this could be the case or it may not be. This could end up in GT7 or it could just pass over until we get the release of Gran Turismo 8, which of course hasn't been confirmed, but it would make sense that of course they've been working on it for a while at this point. So far those are the only two tracks that really seem to have some substance behind them or could be a real possibility. Anything else is just typically something ranting off in a comment section and then it kind of just snowballs from there. And again, this could be the case with a lot of people just mentioning what they've seen or kind of wish to see on certain articles, etc. So of course I'm going to look into today the actual possibility of a new track coming with Gran Turismo 7's probably final update of the year. So of course the PlayStation 5 Pro did release last Thursday, and of course a lot of the build up for the console made mention of Gran Turismo 7 getting a day one update for the said new console. Now of course with a smaller update at the beginning of October 2024, a lot of people assume that this would put it in line for the early November release for the final update of the year, and it would probably be a big one considering Sony have a new console available. We'd be getting the update for the PS5 Pro, a much better looking ray trace version of Gran Turismo 7, and of course it just hasn't happened. It seems to have been delayed. However, of course, with that delay, people are once again assuming that this will be an absolutely massive update and probably the last hurrah for Gran Turismo 7 for 2024. And of course that does then start the rumour mill as mentioned when it comes to new track coming to the game. So the first mention I actually saw of this was someone making mention of the timetable for the Amsterdam World Series final. Now, it's common knowledge by now that Polyphony like to release these kind of world final special pages in the run up to an event. Now, typically this will have key information about competitors, what's running, whether it's the Nations Cup, Manufacturers Cup, Toyota Championship, etc. And sometimes it will have a kind of timetable kind of showing you what's going to be happening during that event. And sometimes we do see a question mark over some races. And once again, this does typically stir up the rumour mill as, okay, that must be a new track coming to the game. Now, of course, with the most recent release of the Amsterdam World Series Finals page, I went ahead and scoured this as I'd seen a lot of comments mentioning that there was a question mark in the timetable for this event. So I spent a bunch of time actually scouring through these pages, the special pages and the World Series stuff, and honestly I couldn't find a single timetable mentioning the Amsterdam event with the question marks in there over one of the races. So honestly, I don't know where this is coming from. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, but I couldn't find it whatsoever. If I am looking in the wrong place, feel free to just point me in the right direction in the comment section. So honestly, I just can't really make note of this. So the next one that I see and hear from a lot of people is the schedule quotation marks of tracks coming to Gran Turismo 7 post launch, and I can see where a lot of people get this thinking from. Now, when it comes to Gran Turismo 7's post launch support, it's been pretty slow overall for tracks coming to the game, and yes, we've received a bunch of variants as well. However, in terms of new tracks, it does tend to go in a pattern. So of course, when it comes to 2022 and 2023, Polyphony have actually released 2 tracks on both of those years. And actually the last time we saw an official bit of Sony hardware, we did get a track alongside it, which was of course the PSVR 2. So here is the pattern that gets mentioned to me a lot. If we look back at previous track releases, let's begin in 2022. In June with 1.17, we saw the release of Watkins Glen, the first standalone post-launch track for GT7. Of course, I believe this was data mined from the days of GT Sport, so that just goes to show you how long it takes Polyphony to make these tracks. Then in November of 2022 with update 1.26, we saw the release of Road Atlanta. This was a pretty hefty update, adding the likes of selling cars and stuff, and this felt like the proper first major post-launch update for GT7. Moving into 2023, in February we saw 1.29 and Grand Valley Highway 1. Of course, this was the day one update for the PSVR 2's release. So of course, a lot of people are assuming, well, that was the last Sony hardware, so probably we'll see this with the PS5 Pro as well. Of course, that update has been delayed now, so we don't exactly know when we're going to receive that, but I can see people's thinking. Then in November with 1.40, Lake Louise released alongside the huge Spec 2 update, and then into 2024, July was 1.49, we saw Eiger Norsvond. Of course, we had the physics refresh and such, so a lot of people are assuming that they would just follow this trend and that in 2024 we will see one more track release. So of course, with people still holding hope that the 2023 leak of the Canadian Grand Prix circuit comes true, and of course Super GT drivers dropping hints that Motegi might be coming back, I can see why a lot of people are hopeful that GT7's final update of 2024 is an absolute banger. And again, it's kind of promoted by the fact that we have the PS5 Pro, and it would only make sense that they release this update alongside some key content to get as many players back as possible and playing Gran Turismo 7 once again. So whilst I couldn't find any official information of the question mark event on the Gran Turismo website, if you guys do know where that is, feel free to point me in the right direction in the comments below. Anyway, that's going to be it from me. Massive thank you for watching. Take care guys. Peace.